Hello, and welcome to today's webcast as we continue to bring you exclusive interviews and dynamic content amidst these unprecedented times. I'm Naomi Goldman, VES Communications Director. Let me share some of the details. We're excited to offer a new series of webcasts around virtual production and how the game-changing technology is helping to solve new creative challenges and advance the development of filmed entertainment. Today, the VES, the American Society of Cinematographers, Camerimage, with a hello to attendees watching live from the festival, and the Virtual Production Committee bring you a conversation on the intersection between camera, VFX, and lighting for virtual production, sponsored by Netflix. We will begin shortly. The webcast will run about 90 minutes, including the Q&A. The session is being recorded and it will be available later on the VES website and our social media channels, and we'll post those details at the end of the session. To submit your questions, if you're following on Zoom and would like to ask any of our panelists a question, please go to the toolbar at the bottom of your screen, click Q&A and type in your question. If you're watching with us on Facebook Live, please enter your question as a comment. We can't promise we'll get to them all, but we'll do our best. Our esteemed panelists with us today are award-winning cinematographer Caleb Deschanel, ASC, award-winning visual effects supervisor Rob Legato, ASC, lighting director Samuel Maniscalco, USC School of Cinematic Arts professor and Georges Méliès Endowed Chair in Visual Effects, Michael Fink, VES, Unity Technologies Head of Development, Habib Zargarpour, and Epic Games Business Development Manager, Miles Perkins. And now I'm going to hand over today's conversation to our esteemed moderator, Director of Emerging Technology at the Mill, Boo Wong. Take it away, Boo.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining today. I am Boo Wong, and I'm the Global Director of Emerging Technology at the Mill, where I head up our focus on future production technologies, experience design, and XR. We're a Technicolor company, and along with our sister group, MPC, we've been pushing on the leading edge of filmmaking and specifically virtual production for the last few years. And I'm joined today, so excited, by a most storied and awarded group of individuals. They're icons and leaders in their own right in filmmaking, cinematography, VFX, storytelling, and technology. And we've looked to them for inspiration in our field, over the years. And today we have the privilege of joining them in discussion around this most topical of topics, virtual production, camera, and lighting. So thanks for the introduction just now, but I want to spend just a few minutes to have them introduce themselves really quickly and maybe just touch a little bit on just ever so slightly on where you are in regards to virtual production, and then we can jump into the conversation. So let's see, who should head this up? Caleb, do you want to start with a really quick intro for yourself?
Yeah, I'm a cinematographer. I had done a lot of movies with visual effects, but I had never thought that I would do a movie like The Lion King, which is totally visual effects. And it was really exciting because of all the people who were involved in setting it up, like Rob and Sam and all the other people. So that's it.
Cool. Rob, since you were just mentioned.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm Rob Legato. I'm a visual effects supervisor and a cameraman and stuff like that. And one of the big thrills of me working in this business for a long time was getting to work with Caleb to actually take everything that he knows and his great skill as a cinematographer and applying it to a film that otherwise doesn't really have somebody of his caliber direct every piece of photography throughout the entire movie. And it was one of the reasons why I wanted to do the movie, was to get somebody like as esteemed as Caleb to make our visual effects even that much better, because they're now photographed by somebody with a great eye and a great talent. So that was a big thrill for me.
Excellent. Sam, are you there?
Hiya, I'm Sam Maniscalco. I was the lighting director for the virtual production unit on The Lion King. My background and experience primarily has been in visual effects and feature animation. So yeah, it was a very exciting experience to get to work back in a real-time environment. I started my career in games, but to actually work alongside a DP has been a lifelong dream of mine. I think specializing in lighting, I'd say most digital artists in that realm would love to work a lot closely with cinematographers. So yeah, it was an exciting experience.
Excellent. Michael?
Well, I've been around for way too long, 40 plus years. Became a visual effects supervisor in 1982, worked on a few films. Like Rob, wound up directing a lot of second unit, doing a little camera work, lots of other things. Right now, though, I'm a professor at USC, and I'm trying to warp young minds and bring them into this great new world of virtual production.
Very important work there. Habib, are you on?
Yes, hi, thank you so much. Definitely an honor to be on this panel with everybody. My background started in visual effects. Spent about 10 years at ILM with Miles actually, working together. And I've had about, even amount of time, 14 or 15 years in film and visual effects, and about the same amount of time in real time with engines. And my passion was always to bring that real-time technology to film. So since 2010, I've been working on that. And thanks to running into Rob for Jungle Book, we managed to start that journey. And I think, it's really exciting to see things finally coming to fruition where we can, stop waiting for pixels.
Excellent. And Miles?
Yeah, thank you. And I agree. Such a pleasure to be on this panel. So I grew up with Habib, he and I, in the ILM days. And really, so I'm responsible for bringing the Unreal Engine into film and television. I've, throughout my career, I've kind of been at the intersection of technology and filmmaking. And, each time when I see something that is just, something that is going to absolutely advance how stories are told, I get incredibly excited. This was back at Jurassic Park, as early as that. And now recently, seeing what is happening where these tools are being put into the hands of cinematographers and directors, where they can interface with the image in a way that they've been used to doing, is just it's thrilling. It's amazing. So I'm thrilled to be here and thrilled to be able to support this community in that way.
Excellent. Thank you all for joining. I mean, the way you speak about yourselves in such like a, humble fashion is amazing. It's just like, I'm a cinematographer, I'm a supervisor. Like, you guys are the best of the best. So I just have to put that out there. Have to get the fanboy part out. And now, there's been so much virtual production activity, the last few years, and you would think that this is like a freshly hatched notion. This use of digital tools in production, and most recently through the adoption of real-time technology, right? And we're seeing it used in previs and location scouts and camera and performance capture, all the way through to final pixel rendering. So Rob, I'd love to start with you. It's like, coming from your long and storied VFX experience, like, what would you define as like the first solid example of virtual production? Like, how far back does it go?
It probably goes back a little further than even me, and I think everybody's wanting to do it for a long time. My introduction wasn't out of necessity. I was doing Aviator, and I wanted to shoot a plane crash. I've never shot a plane crash. It's my first Martin Scorsese movie, so I didn't want to blow it. My first time at that. So I got a set of wheels and a gentleman named Oliver Hotz and Motion Builder, and I was able to live operate crude animation to create a sequence, and then cut it together on my Avid, and then create something that looked like I knew what I was doing when I finally showed Marty. So I thought that was just the coolest way of working. And it was something that I always wanted to do anyway. And I love to shoot and I love to edit and all those various things. So it seemed like this whole virtual production idea was a great one. So I went to Jim Cameron, who I know had a lot of money. And I said that maybe you would be interested in this because he loves to shoot, he loves to edit, likes to do basically touch every button and pull every lever. So I described it to him and how it would be great if we enlarged it with a motion capture stage so you could direct live performers, no matter what they were, whether they're humanoid or something else, and a camera, you could hand hold it or steady cam or crane or dolly or whatever, whatever it is you wanted to do. And he essentially funded me coming up with a working model of it, which I had a ball doing. And then he decided to do Avatar, which was his dream project, because he finally got a chance to actually immerse himself into the computer and be able to move things around and work the way he normally enjoyed working. So that's around the 2005-ish, 2004, I think is when I did Aviator. In 2005, I think is when I introduced it to Jim. And we even started with the whole VR thing as well, or wanted to. We, Glenn Derry, who you may or may not know, a brilliant character, had little video goggles. And we separated out, so there's one video goggle for the right, or one little video screen for the right and one for the left, and we attached it to two PCs that ran Motion Builder, and we created stereo, so you could walk around with this really crude device and actually look around the world. So I knew that that was going to be the future at some point, although the mechanics of it were not ready for prime time, because there was little tiny boxes, but the gag really worked. And so you knew that that was the beginning of what we're doing. I don't know, I'm sure other people and Weta and a couple other people probably were trying in fits and starts, but I think that's the first time anybody's done a whole movie in virtual production. And then my little evolution ended up with recreating it in little fits and starts, never have the money that we had on Avatar. And then Jon Favreau wanted me to do Jungle Book because of my experience on Avatar. So then we developed it again, and then we revamped it totally for Lion King after that. So that's my little brief history. I hope that's...
Well, the little displays have gotten just ever so slightly bigger.
Yes, they got bigger, and you could actually see the entire field of view. And,
yeah.
And you didn't have an umbilical cord about like the size of a baseball bat.
Right. Before we go into like Lion King, like Michael, like where do you see the start? Where did you see the start of virtual production?
Well, I saw it back in the mid '90s. I was at Warner Digital Studios in Burbank, owned by Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers had a project coming up with a friendship between a child and a large creature. And they wanted to get it going. And I was really concerned that as we shot the film, having had this experience prior to this, that it would be very difficult for the DP to frame up the shots and possibly compose the way they wanted to without knowing where that creature was and how large the creature was in the particular environment. So we built a system based on Onyx back in the days of Silicon Graphics. So we had this large refrigerator that would come to the set with us. We had encoders on the camera for accelerometers, and we had encoders if we were on wheels or on fluid head. We had a bunch of other data that we would gather. And we could, with a great deal of latency, because first of all, we
You're muted, Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you hit the mute button.
Yeah, I'm hitting the space bar and holding it, but it's going in and out. So, but it's okay now.
Okay.
Anyway, that was it. We built the system and it actually worked. We did a demo with it on the set so we could show the director. There was no DP at the time. The film was not greenlit. Nobody knew what was going to happen, but we really wanted to get a jump on it. And that was really, the real beginning for me was like 1978 to 1980 when I saw Colin Cantwell doing digital storyboards for the motion control shots on Battlestar Galactica and Buck Rogers. But they were just storyboards. They didn't move. They were just wireframe. It was hardly virtual production. But it was that first little thing. But really, the thing at Warner Digital was what got me going. And unfortunately, the studio did close us, and all that stuff wound up on the ground, being kicked around at an auction and disappeared. All the gear disappeared, and the software disappeared. All the software people went to Sony and did some work at Sony on that. As Rob said, everybody kind of picked away at it in different ways. And so we had our little bit, but it never really reached the light of day. But in my brain, it was,
that's when it started.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, Miles, with you're over at Epic these days, like, what do you think converged around, I don't know, 5 years ago? Was it around there, that basically started the rise of game engine technology, right? As it applies to filmmaking. It's been, we use game engines to make games all day long. But why do you think this convergence point happened?
Actually, interestingly enough, in 2001, when I was at ILM, Scott Farrar and Dennis Mirren actually used the first Unreal Engine to previs part of AI, and to basically give the engine to Spielberg so that he could look through Rouge City. And so those were some of the early days, and it's very rudimentary. And I think that I always say that this is kind of like the iPhone, where there are all these technologies that were around, but they've started to get to a point where they've been packaged in a way that all of the technology can get out of the way. And there's starting to become a little bit more of an ease of use. And I think over the last 5 years, what we've really seen is a perfect storm, I think, of the hardware, of the software, and also I think that there's been creatively also, where you're starting to find a lot of people who are finding that middle ground between what has to this point been highly technical and something that is a little bit more of an kind of an artiste, and really the that filmic vocabulary that you have. And I think that's what we're seeing happening right now. And again, being around George Lucas for a long time, and everybody always, and Habib, always thinking about things in a very different way, and trying to get that immediacy of iteration and being able to very quickly have a collaborative workflow. I think that's been something that has been out there, and I think everybody here on this panel can kind of attest to that. Has been the thing that everybody's been going towards. How can we communicate with real ease? And I do think it's this perfect storm that has happened, and we're in a very unique point of time where this has kind of become democratized in some ways as well. So it's exciting.
Cool. And Habib, like, you were on the virtual production team on Jungle Book. How did it show up there? Like, what were the first aspects of it that were adopted on that film?
Yes, that was very exciting. A big deployment of game engines on a film, where we showed Rob the tools that we developed at Microsoft at the time, and using the Unity engine. And by the time production started, Rob and Girish is online here, and John Brennan, we had the digital domain stage, and you were looking at 14 actors becoming 7 wolves in real time with lighting. And Bill Pope would be moving the lights around. Jon Favreau would direct the actors to do, they were actually pretty convincingly became animals. And it was a really interesting visualization live on stage. And were we to do it today, we could probably get the visuals close, pretty close to final pixel, we call it. But that was really amazing to see, what's really going on stage. But you're looking at the monitor, you have no idea that's actually all live. And for Bill to be able to visualize and he brought his own tripod that they were motion capturing. He liked his own camera head, so he had the same feel of his physical camera, but he's looking at a viewfinder that's virtual. So it was a really incredible collaboration with you know, Rob driving that. But you know, for me, the earliest when I think back, Miles remembers this, Perfect Storm. I mean, Star Wars was all virtual, you know, it was episode 1, but Perfect Storm, we had the ocean simulations and the ship simulations running in real time. And we would have these live sessions with John Seal in Australia, Wolfgang Peterson in LA, and we were in the Bay Area. And it was called a VFX, it was a satellite link. And they would direct me to position the ships on the ocean. We would kind of location scout a nice wave, place the ships, and then the camera was also on a ship. Otherwise it gets submerged pretty quickly with those kind of high, you know, 50-foot waves. And then we would basically hit play and watch the simulation in real time. And they would basically, you know, tell the camera where they wanted to look, but the camera was also physics based. So to me, that was, you know, we were trying to making sure the camera won't go out of the tank when we finally shoot the film live action. So that was like a, you know, to me, the early on version of that.
And, you know, I think that, you know, it seems like, you know, having that connection between, you know, the crews that have been engaged in like 100 years worth of filmmaking, right, and being accustomed to the weight of equipment, of tools, and having that connection go into this next phase of virtual production seems like a really important thing that you guys have flagged, you know, a few times already. You know, maybe this is a good time to talk about Lion King and the work, you know, that Caleb, Sam, Rob, that you guys led on that project. Do you have, maybe if you want to pick up some footage as well? I think you guys brought something beautiful to look at.
Yeah, you want me to start playing it now?
Yeah, whenever you're ready to talk over it.
Sure. All right.
I mean, I think what's important is that on the tail end of all this technology that these guys developed, that basically brought filmmaking in computers into the world that I was used to, which is live action filmmaking. I mean, I've done lots of movies where there were visual effects, but never really visual effects heavy movies. And I always found the visual effects always to be sort of a side part of doing the movie. Although, you know, in the last 10 years, every movie I've done, no matter how, you know, low tech it is, there have been tons of visual effects shots because they're so available now. But Jon Favreau called me in and was interested in me doing this movie. And I was really suspicious at first because he kept referring to the Black Stallion and some of the other movies that I've done as if I was going to go and do this movie in a computer, you know, like I've done live action movies. And, you know, he turned me over to Rob, and Rob took me down to Magnopus downtown. And, you know, they had a sort of crude setup with cameras and, you know, gear heads, and they had some, you know, files left over from, you know, from Jungle Book, and we were able to go in and do it. And I suddenly realized that it was really, you know, designed in a way that I was seeing it live the way I would see, you know, going on a real location, going, you know, to the sets and everything else that I had done, that, you know, all the movies I'd done before. And anyway, I got excited about it, and we went to Africa, and we got the experience of what it was like, and it became something that really influenced how we filmed and how we understood the dangers of the animals and the light and everything else. And when we came back, we had, you know, some prep, and you know, the sets were being designed and stuff. And then, you know, they brought in Sam, you know, who was my lighting director, who was my gaffer, because the thing was about the game engines at that time, which made it possible for everything to be live. The big drawback for me was, how do you get the light? To me, when I go into a set, when I go into a location, you know, it needs to represent what I'm used to seeing, you know, and that affects where I put the camera and all these other things. And, you know, so it was really important that we were able to see the lighting. And, you know, unfortunately at the time, and this is all ancient history, this is 3 years ago, you know, the lighting tools within Unity were not that sophisticated, and most of the tools that we were able to bring into it were using hard light, and it was hard to do soft light. And so Sam and I got together, and we would take these sets and we would start playing around with where we could move the light, because they were still building the animation and the sets. So we got some time together, and it was really wonderful because I got to understand how Sam would light in digital space, and it was very different than I was used to. So we sort of came to an understanding. I mean, we ended up, when we couldn't have a soft light, we ended up like putting a whole lot of like spotlights together and creating a massive wall of lights, and we even referred to them as a Samo light. And we would do all these things that would were able to sort of simulate the reality that I was used to in the movies that I've done. And so I learned from him, and I think he learned from me. And Sam, you might talk about a little bit about that, and then we can lead into some of the shooting. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to say was, because it was live, because it was 24 frames a second, we could go into the space and we could move the camera and we could set it up the way we normally do. We were able to do all the things that I've always done on a movie, which is you read the script, you get an idea of it. I mean, like for instance, in The Lion King, it's, the circle of life. So, in a strange way, the light and the time of day and the way that it evolves from, dawn to dusk and, nighttime, and, it's the constant turning of the earth, the constant, evolution of time. And that was really important to have as a lighting element within the structure of the movie. And, it plays out in the movie, I mean, in a subconscious way. And that was always something that was kind of guiding us, just the way you would on a regular movie, where you come up with a conceptualization of how you visually want to tell the story. And that was working with Jon Favreau, talking about it and doing storyboards that were sort of referenced, but never really the guides for how we filmed it. And Rob Legato, who's just brilliant and also a really wonderful cameraman. So we would just have this wonderful give and take, like, well let's try this, and every day, despite the fact that you would go and you would work out the animation the way you do on a set with actors, and you work out the blocking. Well, that would be animated, and then we would film it, and we would just bounce ideas off of each other. And it was a never-ending, feast of, sort of creative energy. I mean, I was really shocked that it had been brought to that level of filmmaking to where you could actually make the same kind of decisions you normally make. And, I'd like Sam, because, that was a big factor, the fact that I could use all the tools, the dollies and cranes and everything else in that virtual space, and put on the goggles and be in Africa and move things around. But the next part of it was getting the lighting to represent the kinds of things that I'm used to doing on a live set. So Sam, why don't you talk about, because you probably have a different point of view than I have about how we came to meld our ideas together and develop the lighting style for the movie.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point. I mean, I'd say without this technology, someone with my background and experience, in a VFX pipeline, being propelled to work alongside a cinematographer, that would never have happened. I'm much further down the line. In traditional pipelines, lighting is one of the last things that gets done before it gets handed off as final image. So for me, it was super exciting for lighting now to be considered as, in visual effects anyway, as part of the beginning process. And for me, actually, I was on Jungle Book, but I was on the back end of that. I was in London working with Adam Valdez over there, and he had an idea of trying to, it wasn't so much real time, but I was part of a smaller agile team where we were quickly iterating on ideas. And I was a lighting director there, and we were doing still frames, and we were using tools and processes that were familiar with us in 2D, in Nuke and in Comp, to quickly iterate and get ideas out and in front of people like Adam and Rob And I was super fascinated by the work that had come before me. It was shot here in LA for the virtual production unit on Jungle Book. So how I came to be on Lion King was after Jungle Book wrapped, I came back to my hometown of Sydney and went back into feature animation. And I got a call from Adam to come over to LA. He told me about the Lion King and that they wanted to shoot this in a totally different way. And he wanted someone to work with a DP who was familiar with digital lighting, but also had experience enough in cinematography and cinematography terms. So I came to LA not quite knowing, I jumped at the opportunity. I was like, yes, I want to work with the DP. That's something that I really want to do and get involved more in the real-time space. So when I sat down with Caleb for the first time, it was a really interesting experience. Caleb had ideas about how he wanted to light and brought his experiences to the table. And I really wanted to show him what is available in real time and the lighting tools that I'm used to working with as well. So I kind of put together a little bit of like it was kind of like an unofficial gaffer's toolkit where I was putting together soft boxes, scrims and flags and things like that, tools that Caleb would have been used to working with on set, but just trying to familiarize himself with the technology. And some of the big differences for us in the digital world is how we represent the sun, for instance, is a whole new thing altogether. How we represent sky. But at the end of the day, they give us the quality of light that Caleb's looking for. It's just done in a different way. So I was trying to make that as user-friendly as possible. There was things like when we're using the sun, it's kind of an abstract idea in CG space. The sun doesn't quite have a position. The computer knows the sun as it doesn't have any fall off to the light. So when you see it in space, it's just kind of rotating around. And I was building things like, attaching like a sphere to it so we could actually visualize it in 3D space. So you can actually see the sun in the sky, which normally you wouldn't do. And for me, for someone like me, I kind of get used to that idea of working, of not being able to actually see this physical light. But for someone like Caleb, it was a harder jump into. So I was trying to build these tools to make it easier and to bring Caleb's expertise and allow him to be able to light within Unity. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say that for me it was essential to have the lighting, because that when I'm on a set, I don't know what to do if I don't see the way it's going to be lit in the end, so it was really important that it happened at that stage so that I know what to look at, and the thing is about the lighting within CGI is that it has a reality to it, so that if you put a tree in front, suddenly you get a shadow from the tree from the sun and everything. And one of the things that was really frustrating was when we were suddenly in the jungle, or in the cloud forest, with all these trees. The trees would be built as part of the set, but what would happen is that we would set the sun and the sun would be totally blocked. So a lot of our lighting when we were in the forest was Sam and I sitting there and pulling out trees until we got the kind of dappled light that we want. But then you have the problem that what we're doing is really representative of the light, where the sun is, what the shadows look like, how deep you see into the shadows. All those things are information that we then give to the final completion of the film at, at MPC, where they make these huge files where they have much more sophisticated lighting and everything. But this was the reference. And if you suddenly change the trees, which in our world were kind of facsimiles of the trees that would go in there with different leaves and everything, you would have a whole different representation when you went to the high resolution trees where they actually were the acacia trees or whatever they happen to be. So, lots of times the iteration of it in the final did not match what we did. So it was like going back in and trying to retrofit it so that it looked like what we wanted it to look like. And the same thing where Rob was talking the other day about the fire lighting at the the big fight at the end, and how when it sort of came out at first, and so we had to go to London and sort of do some revisions and things like that. But all in all, it was like an amazing experience. And I have to say that, working with Rob and working with Sam and, obviously, John Favreau and, all the whole team at, at MPC was just an amazing experience. I mean, it's like being on, a really great team in sports or something. It's really, it's exciting. So. Rob, maybe you could run.
Sure.
Do
you want to do the from the movie or the behind the scenes?
Why don't you do from the movie, because I mean it sort of represents what Sam and I were talking about. Where
we could talk over it as well.
Pardon?
I said we could talk over it as well. Be silent.
Yeah, and the thing is, I was talking about like sort of light and dark and the evolution of, the time starting. But when we were in the cave, what was important is that Scar is sort of this creature. He's like a vampire. He's a sort of evil character. And he, most of the time we have him in the shade. You go back a little bit farther, Rob.
Jumped ahead for some reason.
Yeah, and and the idea is that this whole sequence is, all about light and dark and coming in and out of shadows. And we would set flags, for instance, so that, Scar is in the shadow. And when he first appears, you hear his voice first, and then he comes forward and he comes into the light. And the only time he comes into the light is when he's going to kill something or do something horrible. The rest of the time, we sort of have kept him in the shadow side of trees and rocks and everything else. And so here, the thing that was great was we were able to sort of determine the time of day and alter it. And every shot we altered the light. Sam and I would go in and we would get the animation, the way it was going to be, like for instance here, and we would do lighting setups on it before it came to the set. And then when we were filming, if we would change an angle or something, we would also alter the light so that it would still have the same feeling that it would have when, if you were shooting this, live. So, it was all about Scar coming in and out of the shadows. And when Mufasa arrives, he sort of ends up, crossing the frame and ends up settling down in the shadow. And, this is a really important aspect to this particular scene, was to sort of get across that idea of the light and dark and the,
Yeah, and to that point, Caleb, with our setups, we actually had the ability when we were kind of exploring these scenes off of stage and doing kind of pre-lighting and prep, we were able to kind of build certain setups off of stage and bring those to stage and then load them in as needed. So as a new kind of animation or file came to stage, we could then load in our lighting setup and kind of snap it instantly into place, instead of having to then take the time to then relight and do a whole nother setup. A lot of this work, we kind of had access to these files and we were kind of doing a lot of prep work before shoot day.
One of the things I want to stress too in this, in what we're describing, is part of the job of the cinematographer is every frame goes through his taste factor and his eye, and the lighting and the way the camera is moving and that it's moving in some shots and not others, and how it's staged and all that stuff is what makes, the natural look like the natural, or The Right Stuff, or The Godfather, or it's an appreciation of the art form that every shot goes through one eye, and that eye has created the look of the movie. And that's the stuff I wanted to protect as much as possible, because we don't often do it in CG films. It might be turned over to a lighting department who's not designed the shot based on how it should be lit, and becomes an arbitrary choice as opposed to a very specific artistic choice that matches the taste level of the cinematographer, shot in and shot out, and creates what amounts to as the tone or the style of the movie. So that's important, and to make that work is that you need to do it in real time. You need live input to say, oh, now that I see the shot and the action, I want to adjust this and I want to adjust that. And it comes to you, it sparks your natural intuition of how to stage and shoot something. And that's what's the fun part about shooting live, is you have continual input that sparks your imagination and makes you go, try something different, try something better, and not have a series of 50 or 60 arbitrary chosen camera angles or lighting things or whatever else. And part of it is teaching the visual effects culture that we change the light specifically on every shot to enhance the drama of that particular moment. And there is no lighting consistency in real life, in real filming either. We shoot over an entire course of a day and might shoot a 3-page scene over a full day. The light's changing just about every setup, but it's the cinematographer choosing when those things are shot based on where the sun is at any one time that makes it feel consistent and enhance the drama.
Yeah, no, in the death of Mufasa, the thing that I really wanted, this shot here where I wanted light on the back wall and I wanted Mufasa and Simba to be in the shadow, and so in this case, like for instance, the big pan around when you follow the wildebeest and you see the shape of Mufasa who has died in the background. I wanted there to be, almost a silhouette kind of feeling of, the light being on the walls. And in that case, we ended up, Sam and I actually had to put 2 suns in there and then put big flags around because the set, was designed in a way where we couldn't get the light we wanted on both, parts of the pan around. So, there were things like that you could do that you couldn't do in real life, which was really wonderful. But in each case, I sort of wanted, this whole scene to take place kind of in the umber of the with the sunlight in the background, and just to sort of emphasize the almost like the end of the day, almost like sunsets, so that you get the feeling of, again, the world turning and the circle of life and all this stuff. So, all those elements that you would use in a live action movie were so much more available to us because we could control things in ways that, you always are doing a live action movie and you come in and it's raining and you really wanted sunlight, or, the production manager has arranged for you to shoot in a place that's, suddenly you want to shoot there in the morning and they've scheduled it for the afternoon, and there are all those things, and you're always constantly adjusting and finding ways to sort of make it work out for yourself. The wonderful thing too is that part of what we did and what we had control over was also skies. We had like 350 skies that we could choose from.
Yeah, we had a lot, and we actually had some stuff from Kenya as well, which we had access to. In our own sky selection. So we could, we would go through and look at a whole number of skies that were either shot on the reference shoot in Kenya or that we had access to through MPC. And we would also go in at times and augment our own skies. If Caleb, when we had shots where Simba or Mufasa were being shot up against the sky, and you wanted specific cloud placement, we were able to do that. We were able to kind of paint in skies to taste.
Yeah, and if you think about it within a movie, I mean, like for instance, this is at the end of the movie, and there's it's rain, it's been dry, and and this is rain, and it's also there's sort of a sad moment because it's sort of the end of an era and the beginning of a new era, and so using the sky and using the atmosphere and the rain and all that is, from an emotional point of view, is really, deep seated in the storytelling, and that, the visuals are key to the storytelling in this movie. And, there's just something sort of wonderful about, being able to have the control And I have to say, I was really glad that I was not so suspicious that I didn't want to do it, because I was afraid that it was not going to be the kind of fun and, you know, excitement that I'm used to having on a live set where you're constantly making live action decisions. Because I always feel that movies are made on the set. You can prep them, you can have ideas about what you want, you know, to do, how you want to tell the story visually, but you actually have to, it has to be live and it has to be made final decisions on the set, because things happen. You know, there's always the serendipity of things that happen in a movie, and the serendipity here, because the animation was fixed, the serendipity came from, you know, coming up with new and exciting ideas for how you can get across a particular emotion, and how you can position the camera so that there's a surprise of a reveal or something like that. And, you know, to me, I'm, you know, I mean, you look at this and we're on a stage and we're, you know, looking at things, you know, you look at it in 3D in your goggles, but then you're filming it on, you know, on a monitor. And I never thought that that would be as exciting as it ended up becoming. You know, one of the drawbacks of when we were actually filming is that what we saw on our monitors never quite represented what Sam and, you know, and I had done in terms of lighting. So we had to I had to keep going back and forth from Sam's monitor, who would have all the lighting, you know, closer to what it was going to look like than, you know, than what it, you know, what it looked like to us. So there were limitations, but I mean, those limitations are gone now. I mean, the technology has evolved so much in the last couple of years that, you know, you actually get that great lighting in the monitor that you're actually seeing and filming with. And that's, you know, that's where, you know, the technology has evolved to a point. And what this technology has given us is the ability to make the same decisions. It's, you know, Rob is always talking about how over the last 100 years, filmmaking has evolved, and all the tools that have been incorporated into the you know, the reality of filming is, you know, is something that you ultimately want to get to in visual effects. So it's not trying to imagine looking at one frame at a time what it's going to be like when it's done. You actually see it because of game engines and because of the sophistication of the game engines with lighting tools and ray tracing and everything else that can go on now that just makes it so much easier. I mean, this is all, you know, something that you could actually, this final is something that you could actually see on the monitors, you know, today, which we were not able to see. We had to imagine that, you know, it was going to be the way we wanted it to look, you know. So yeah, I mean, you know, listen, it's this sort of wonderful meld of technology and artistry that is what filmmaking is all about. And, you know, I think, you know, we're coming to a stage where, you know, all the people who were excluded from this process because the technology required a certain understanding and a certain ability to deal with, you know, the oblique way that you deal with technology, that's all gone now. I mean, it's now a perfect blend of, you know, all the tools we're used to coming together at a point where now you can make those live, you know, on the spot decisions and create the movies the way they've always been made, you know, for the last 100 years. And I think that's wonderful for the future of filmmaking.
Agreed, you know, and I think that bringing also, like, you know, VFX artists are often, you know, as Sam like kind of touched on just now, like often at the tail end of any production, they inherit the shots. A lot of decisions have already been made for them. Whereas I think that, you know, having everybody on set, on a virtual set at the same time, and being able to make the storytelling and filmmaking decisions together really changes the conversation.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that, like, a question that just came up from the chat is that a question was, you know, was the virtual world created using scans and digital assets taken in Africa? And I think that the reason why I think this is an important question to ask is that, you know, similar to live action shoot, you got to know what your location is. When you bring a camera out there, you have to know where you're going to shoot. So when you're in a virtual world and you're in a virtual production pipeline, how important was it to get the environment completely kind of in place before you before you rolled, you know, a virtual camera onto that location?
Well, we created the environment just like you would choose a location. You have the drama that you want to portray and you want to find the best place to portray it in. And in our case, we could make a hybrid where we like the way this looked and we like the way that looked. If we combine them, that becomes the perfect location to set up this particular scene or shot. So again, it's pretty much akin to that. And so the art director would make up the world based on conversations that we'd have in a normal filmmaking collaborative way, which is, well, we need this, we need that, we need to feature this. Sometimes they're showing off. I want you to see where we live and how grand it is and all that stuff. So all that was a character that was part of it. It's not just a background. It was specifically chosen. And then when Caleb goes in with myself and John and the art director, it's, you know, what time of day best plays, you know, does this play in? And it so becomes very much like a regular location scout. You're making all these various choices. Now you can augment them and change them and whatever. And then you bring the animation supervisor in and restage. Maybe you should start over here and end up over here. So it's very much, that's why I brought up the comment about 100 years of filmmaking. That's the way we've always made movies. They are collaborative. They're based on other people's energy, and you try it. It's like, yeah, it didn't seem like a good idea. And then you try, it's like, oh, that's great. You know, I never would have thought to do that. So you do that. And then someone says, well, if you think that's good, what if we did, you know, and all of a sudden you get you basically entered back into the normal 100 years of filmmaking that we've enjoyed, that really hard to beat. It's very difficult to do better, come up with a better system than what we already have. As obtuse and crazy as it is, it still is the best way. Sometimes we do 20 takes reoperating a shot till you got the organic rhythm to be just so, as the reveal and the light coming in and all the various things. So, you know, that's a lot of it. So, and the short answer is, we went to Africa, we looked at a bunch of stuff, we based things on some real locations and we augmented them to get the perfect location for whatever we were staging and shooting.
But also there was an element, because it was live action when we were filming it, you know, we could repeat action, you know, over and over and over until you got it perfect. But we always found that usually it was a matter of, you know, something, you know, on the third take, you'd miss something or something, but then you go back and look at it after you'd sort of perfected it and go, no, it's much better where you don't follow it perfectly, that there's things to, you know, so you almost build in these mistakes or allow the mistakes to, you know, to follow through. I mean, you know, there is a tendency to want perfection, but perfection is, you know, sort of defies the reality of you know, real live action filmmaking, you know, unless you're really lucky. And there, you know, there are times when you get lucky on, you know, certainly within scenes, and sometimes on whole movies you get lucky. So, you know.
Well, in CG, like in live action, you try for perfection, just can't get it. There's a bump in the dolly track at the wrong time, and the actor, you know, can't really repeat the same performance, and you sort of make these compromises. You're always trying to get it perfect, but you can't. And the computer can get it perfect, but you don't want it. You actually want these other things, these organic moments that you take advantage of, including in the edit, you know, where sometimes putting two shots together that have a bump in a particular area gives it a particular piece of energy that you completely eliminate when you make every shot perfect. And so you don't get this organic kind of exciting analog, you know, try this shot with this shot. And even though they were not meant to go together, all those things are, again, akin to regular filmmaking that we are used to seeing, and I think we still like. The other thing, Caleb, I want to bring out, maybe you want to elaborate on it, is that when you're operating a shot, you are the audience, and you tend to, when you lose interest in something or get interest in something else, you organically move towards it. And then, you know, focus follows suit, and the dolly grip follows suit. You know, it is based on what you're seeing. I don't know if you want to talk about a little more about that, about why it feels more natural to film in this way.
Well, I mean, when we first started out, I mean, you know, we did have a dolly on the stage, which was hooked up to the computer, and we could move it. We have a person moving it, and you know, we didn't really have a dolly grip, and there was something wrong about it. It just didn't really have the right feel, because yes, it would move from A to B at the right amount of time, but there's a real that goes on between a dolly grip and the action. And the same thing with focus, because we could have the focus, you know, you could just put a dot on a lion's eye and that was stay in focus all the time. And then if you transfer to something else, as you pan, you know, it would follow, but it always felt very mechanical. So we actually ended up building these tools so that, you know, you could use a Preston, and I brought in my regular assistant, Tommy Teach, and he would be on the set, you know, the whole time. And we would have, you know, our dolly grip, a real dolly grip brought in. You know, it made a huge difference because it was all handmade. I mean, all the decisions and the same, you know, like Rob says, it's like you look at something and then suddenly your eye goes to something else and you pan and you do. So you know, and the other thing about is that we were creating dailies just the way you do on a regular movie. It wasn't animated in that you just do, okay, there's just this close up and then this cuts to here. And it's like perfectly storyboard. We were actually shooting, you know, like whole scenes with, you know, masters and close-ups and dolly shots and cranes and, you know, building the thing together the way it was a movie. And then, you know, then John and the editor would go and they would edit it together. And sometimes they'd, you know, say the next day, oh, we could really use a close-up here, or we could use something else. And so it was the same kind of give and take that you have on a regular movie. It wasn't, yes, it's an animated movie that looks at live action, but it was not shot that way. It was actually filmed live action with all the heads and tails and all the kinds of coverage that you would ordinarily have in a regular movie. So that's another way that it was very different, and I think adds to the fact that the camera was always being operated, the fact that, you know, the follow focus was being done live, and the dolly and the, you know, was being moved by a human being, you know, who was reacting to what was going on. All that, you know, contributes to, you know, its sense of reality. And I think, you know, that's also what made it really exciting filming it too.
I think the point Rob brings up about, you know, the performance aspect and imperfections, and Caleb touching on that is really key. You know, I've always focused on making the tools accessible to the key creators, the directors, the DPs, and you know, anyone who needs to see the sets in visual effects. And one of the really interesting things with using these tools on Blade Runner 2049, we were trying to reconceive a few shots with Denis Villeneuve, and he was performing not only the camera moves but also the flight of the spinner for a particular sequence. And you know, him interacting with the scene that way actually changed the outcome. So it wasn't so much about, you know, it's a faster, easier way to do things, but him actually, you know, trying the flight path and realizing, you know, that has to be done a different way. And I have a little clip. Should I run that?
Yeah.
This is basically showing the scene when he was recording. This is what he could see. So you can see, this is the shot here. It's the Trash Mesa sequence with the giant ships. And the original plan was to have the spinner go around this particular structure and fly over the ship. And this is where it gets harpooned from that ship. And the first several times that he was trying to do that flight path, he was flying the spinner using the virtual camera. He would keep crashing into the ship. So then he realized, looking at the cut with his editor, Joe, they just needed to gain altitude after Kay was being shot on. So here, this is actually Denis performing. He performed the spinner flight already, and then we put him back in the seat and he's performing the camera move. And then you can really feel the organicness of the move, and he's a very, very decisive director. So he knew right away that's what he wanted for the shot. And you know, we would just go through these really quickly. Other shots where here, it was a more collaborative shot where I'm dollying and he's operating the camera head, but this shot was location scouted using the virtual set from the previs. And you know, what you saw before was also scans from the miniatures from Weta that were brought in by Framestore. But you know, this particular shot was added late in post as a way to extend the trip from LA to the orphanage. And he wanted to show the relationship between LA, the seawall, and the ocean. And this is him operating completely freehand. And thanks to all digital shots, that was what Paul Lambert's team could render exactly as it was. So I think, you know, there's a lot of interesting interactions that happen when you're interacting in real time, just like you would be on a real set. And then you start to, you know, forget, if the tools are transparent enough, then you're just using your creative mind the way you were used to, whether it's real or virtual. That's the real, I think, threshold.
So I do want to say that we are going to, I want to tease out that we are going to have the chance to actually see some live driving of the camera by our team here, our panelists here. So definitely hang out for that. We're going to be doing that towards the end of the panel, but it's going to be awesome. Just moving on to Michael, just real quick, because we've been talking a lot about kind of these new tools and the kind of introduction and integration into filmmaking and the collapsing of, you know, production and post-production, where it's all happening kind of as a melting pot all at the same time. How have you seen that play out in school, you know, at USC?
Like Rob before he got Jim Cameron's bank account to help him develop stuff, schools don't have a great deal of money for software development, but what we do, because we have lots of students and they're very interested in filmmaking, and they watch and look and follow everything that's being done, and they have a pretty good sense of film history. So what happens is that they love and have totally embraced the 100 years of history of how films are made. And they love the collaboration on set. They love the innovation in real time with actors, with lights, with cameras, you know, directors. They love it. They don't want to give that up. And when people like Rob and Caleb were doing Lion King, it wasn't lost on them what was going on there. And so as a consequence, you know, for instance, one of our students just dove in with both feet and made a little short film, which wound up being actually an Academy Award winner as a student film. His name's Emery Octon, and Emery was the writer or co-writer, the director, the DP, the camera operator, you know, because it's a student film. And when you make a short film, as students make short films, when you make them and you want to do one like this, you really need people to do all the sorts of things that Rob and Caleb needed people for on Lion King, but you're only making a film this long. It's like not this, you know, the amount of effort it takes is huge, but we never have that many people. So people do multiple jobs. And maybe Rob he's got it on his machine. So maybe Rob can run just this little 1 minute or so clip of just a tiny segment of the final 5 or 6 minute film to give you an idea about what Emery did. So. The film is entitled Two. Obviously, I just grabbed a little bit of the title sequence. So a little introduction to the fact they are babies. And then the wacky hijinks.
Sustain the solar flare. Engines 2, 3, and 6 are out. 2, are you there? You've probably noticed we're rolling. We are now at the point of no return. 2, you want to just ride at the end where you are. I don't think I'll make it that long. I'm sorry to leave you like this, 2. We might be the only ones that got this close to the sun. One giant step for a robot, huh? for me? Want to show me what a star really looks like?
The basic workflow for Emory here is pretty straightforward. That's it. Just that little clip. And the reason I included this clip is that it sort of encapsulates the technology that Emory was working with. So he did motion capture for the robot. The robot came from the Unreal store and had some modifications, but small. Emory did motion capture with an actor to play the robot. Wound up, of course, having to do all this retargeting to get the actor to fit the actor's motion to fit the robot. It turned out to work pretty well. But then he had the set and the robot, and either by putting on VR glasses or just looking at a screen, he could operate a camera in real time in Unreal and capture live camera motion rather than programming camera motion for the action. You know, and in a way, drawing on a lot of the stuff that had just come before in the industry. So that's sort of how we're doing it. We're picking up what's happening, and then depending on a lot of friends to support us to help the students get where they need to get to. Because chasing the technology is hugely expensive. And, you know, if we were chasing technology at the School of Cinematic Arts in 2010, we would have converted the entire school to making nothing but 3D movies. Because we were being told by the studios in 2010 that they were never going to make 2D movies again after the advent of Avatar. So if we chased it, we would have really been in a big pickle, but we didn't. We did teach 3D cinematography, and we still have some rigs and some things. If students are interested in it, they can do it, but we no longer are focusing on specific classes for it. But anyway, that's how the students get involved. And now currently they're doing a project which is just finishing up with the Entertainment Technology Center, which is operates under the School of Cinematic Arts. It's run by a fellow named Ken Williams, and who used to be at Sony. And they propose envelope pushing technology efforts in storytelling to different sponsors. And I can go quickly to the slides if you want to see that now, or you want to wait for a bit. It's up to you, Boo.
Do you have actually, while you're prepping the slides, Miles, do you want to talk a little bit about, you know, you've spoken a bit about education, but I think that there's also the topic of educating the VFX community as well, the professional VFX community. And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, we've put quite a bit of energy and into kind of how we approach these tools within the visual effects community, because, you know, as you can imagine, game engine technology, it's not simply a render portal. It actually has physics. It has this one-to-one nature with the world around. It has if-then. And these are some of the aspects that I think that it's a little bit of a different way of thinking and a different way of approaching. I've also kind of noticed that sometimes it's like you have to take 2 steps back to take 5 steps forward. So one of the things that we did was launch a fellowship program. And we're now in the 3rd version of that fellowship program, and plan on having more next year. And in addition to things that we've of course done with the VES, but I think that the thing that I would like to get out for anybody here is to know that there's a wealth of educational information out there. And not only is there a wealth, but it's ultimately free and extremely accessible. not only with the software and any of the game engine software that's out there, but also scenes, so that you can start to dissect, okay, exactly how was this done? And I think that is, you know, I think the industry that we're in, it's one thing when you're kind of doing things, just picking up tools and starting to, but it's a whole different thing when you actually apply it to a project. So, you know, we're looking forward to doing more of this, and really trying to offer those services and that educational content to the professionals who have, you know, have these amazing eyes, that have this amazing ability to bring these stories to life. You know, Ty Ellingson is a friend of mine, and he, when we had Photoshop was kind of coming online, he said to me, and it always stuck with me, he goes, I was like, well, what's it like using this? And he goes, nah, I'm still just a caveman, just spreading, you know, dirt on a wall. It just got a lot more colors. And so I think that's kind of what we're dealing with. These tools are really to enable people. So what we need to do is educate as much as possible and get that out of the way so that creatives can just create.
Michael, do you have slides ready? I think that talking about, I think you're going to show ripple effect and the ETC. I think is super timely right now, because this is something that production that happened during this lockdown period. So
Yes.
how was it to work, you know, with that in mind?
Well, it was fairly difficult because the production started early, and nobody really had their protocols in place as to what you did. So first I'm going to go real quickly through some slides of just the shoot, but then I'll go into what we had to do for COVID-19 compliance. But it's, let me just do that. Let's hold on, and like that. And oops, hold on. Well, I don't really have to do this, but there is some video at one point. Okay. Where are we? Oh, there we are. Sorry. So everybody can see that, right? Okay, fine. So Ripple Effect was a project that was developed at ATC, and as you can see, there were, this is an early blocking of who was going to be responsible for what and where it was going to go. The eventual chart for this is way too large to put on one screen. It looks like a nuke comp tree for a very complex shot. You have to scroll through it, so I'm not showing that, but you get an idea. There are a number of players in the mix here, people that all have volunteered and helped create this thing.
We're only seeing a white screen, Mike.
Yeah, I was just wondering.
You're not seeing my screen.
See a white screen.
It's slide 3.
Do you have two?
I think we're seeing the notes and not the image.
Well, that is pretty weird. Hold on.
Yeah, give it the correct display when you launch it. It should show if it display 1 or 2.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, maybe I'm going to skip this because what I have done is I have lost my cursor. And there, I guessed where it was. And that was supposed to stop the share, but it didn't.
Let me
okay.
maybe let's Habib, maybe we can talk a bit about what you've been doing
sorry guys,
this period, and then we'll come back around, Michael.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd love to,
before we ran, everything was fine. So
yeah, I'd really love to see ripple effect, because the kind of the work that you guys are doing to make a white paper on a COVID compliance is super important.
Yeah. Well, I'll go straight to that. But do you want me to go straight to the other PowerPoint, and let's just see what happens?
Okay, yeah, that works too.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. Microsoft PowerPoint, desktop, right there. Make sure I get the right window. And,
okay, seeing that.
All right, and hold on. Save, start. Come on. Okay, can you see that?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, fine. All right. So one of the advantages of game engines is that in prepping a show, and I have a number of t-shirts I wear. I was going to wear one today. It's called Fix It in Prep. That's across the front. But it allows us to previs things. So what we never imagined, I think, was actually prevising the production process. But because of the COVID compliance rules, we did. So this is a really brief little piece. So we built the stage, the first stage that we shot on, which was this XR stage in San Fernando Valley. And it's an LED wall that wraps around, and you'll see it in a second. But what we had to do was establish zones for people to work in and places where they could be in proximity to others. And we had to establish base camps for each of the different disciplines. So people stayed within their little pod of collaborators. And then we built some fancy stuff where we had like in this frame, the green circles are essentially roughly a 6-foot circle. And the red circles only turn red when one of the characters is closer than 6 feet to the other one, and then they turn red as soon as they step apart. So if you watch this animate, these guys are blinking on and off all the time. And we're trying to never have any red because first of all, they're students, we don't want to put them at risk. But secondly, we don't want to put anybody at risk. So we built it, and we built it to work on the set, and when figured out where people had to be when, and each department was in a color, so you knew where everybody was. And this was all built from walking through the space physically, not in VR, and finding out where we could put people and where we couldn't, and then coming back. So we scanned the space, made a 3D model of the space, brought in these little avatars from Unreal, and started to move them around and wound up with a map. And then that map went out every day on a call sheet like this. So everybody on the call sheet knew exactly where to go first when they got there. And then they knew what path they had to walk on, because this started in the summer, and the summer was like now, it was not good. And so it was really strict, and the path they could walk on would be described in the map, and that's where they had to go. We had witness cameras set up on the set so that we had real-time feeds to multiple watchers by virtue of Teradek. Guys, some of you are familiar with Teradek. So using the Teradek system to relay the image. So that's the overall 3D model of the stage with sets that are not actually there. And that was it. I mean, that's really what we did. But each day on the call sheet, everybody knew where they had to go and where they could be and where they couldn't be, and exactly what was going on. So it turned out to be a really, really handy tool. And when they first started doing it, I thought, can't we just do this? Why do we have to, have this thing, that seems to be an impediment? But as it turned out, it wasn't, and it became, especially when it was used in combination with some other code that was written, and the folks on the production called it Set Buddy, which allowed everybody to be tracked in real time as to where they were. So if somebody did get sick, and in fact, Emery, the fellow who made that short film you just saw the clip of, was the initial director of photography on this project. He actually got sick with COVID-19 shortly into production. And so he had to leave. And the crew had to stop for a while, and we had to do all that kind of stuff. And so we had all this work that we had done, and another DP, David Brilhart, a very experienced television DP, and ventured into this kind of stuff all the time, stepped in and took over to finish the film. But I mean, that was it. I mean, that's what we did. And the film itself was, this is really weird. There's just something very strange going on. Sorry, guys. I mean, that's where Unreal started to become available, and Unity would do the same thing. Be really valuable in a situation like this where we had given spaces and we knew we had to keep people safe. And where could we put them?
I think it's so cool that like once you gamify, you know, in a way, your entire production environment, like it's a creative tool, obviously a technical tool as well, but then also like it actually helps production also. It's kind of, you know, I don't want to sound like a sales rep because I'm not, but like it's amazing. You know, once you can basically make your entire production environment smart, you know, and really integrated, you know, it's really powerful. Habib, like what were you up to the last few months? And from there, I would love to have you ready to go with the demo, because we've got some really good stuff coming up.
Yes, I'll talk fast, 15 minutes to go. Basically, and I'll show a video that's not directly related to what I'm talking about, but that saves time. But I've been collaborating on a film called Aquarium with director Sylvain Chomet. And you can see early days in 2012 working with Alex McDowell on a Disney film, you know, early on. And that whole process started with Joe Terry and James Cameron in 2010 to try and bring real-time tools, you know, with descriptions of what they needed. But what I've been working with on this Aquarium film, it's a feature film, is working remotely with Sylvain Chomet, the director, the writer, producer, production designer, everybody on Zoom remotely, building this world out. That's the film, that's going to be the set for the film, and location scouting and doing basically virtual shoots that we turned into a teaser for them to start to you know, promote the film. And so the whole process of communicating about building the space, you know, the director would draw on the screen remotely, and be able to tell us where he wants certain roads to be built. Same thing with the production designer. All of these things, this whole remote collaboration, I think is huge. And the real-time technology can help a production from the very first design stage all the way through to pre-visualization, through to on-set visualization, where they want to see their set extended or using LED screens, all the way to post, like I showed on Blade Runner, where you can reconceive shots or add shots, and you know, get to the holy grail of doing the actual visual effects in an engine. So the experience of doing that remote collaboration, here you're seeing an example of collaboration in VR. So multiple people looking at the same thing, you know, guiding each other to look at stuff. And, you know, the virtual tools we've been developing with the team at Unity is easy accessibility, so you can jump in, shoot your shots. This is a VR example, you know, going over, you know, being in an environment. So with that, I'm going to see if we can get to our virtual demo. So we can, you know, basically this is a scene from, these are assets from the Blade Runner previs that I brought into Unity with HDRP. And that's the high definition render pipeline. It's the new rendering. And This is the actual spinner that DNEG rendered for the film. And what I'm hoping is to do a quick sequence that we can cut together and get some help from Caleb and Rob on the cinematography. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me. Can't wait to see the shots that they make. So let's go.
So with that, I'm gonna dive in, and if you can still see my screen, okay. I'm using a very basic virtual camera. It's a controller, and then I'm using my Pixel 3 XL. So, you know, very accessible tools. And one of the things I really enjoy, and, you know, the ability to control things, you know, changing camera rigs and things like that. The best part for me is when I connect the virtual camera, and this is when things come to life. So right now I just connected the phone, and I can, you know, I can move around, I can look around, and we can do camera settings, and I'm gonna start to shoot a series of shots in sequence. So if Caleb and Rob want to direct me on how they would shoot this scene. Also, I have a few characters you know, I do have someone in the driver's seat. I have a passenger, and I have this other replicant walking towards the spinner. And what I've done is actually everything you've seen was puppeteered using the phone and the controls. And so we could actually create our own, but basically we have this character walking towards the spinner, and then the spinner will take off. And then we have some in-flight, you know, in-flight spinners that we can use. So I'm going to start shooting this. Maybe Caleb, where would you start shooting this? Outside, inside?
Yeah, Habib, you know, the one thing is missing is we don't know what a story is, and that's what always guides us when we're making a movie. So it's kind of like shooting shots, which is really fun in this environment. But, you know, to me, it's just, you know, this will be a matter of just sort of looking at it and what's really cool. And the other thing that's also missing for me that was really essential tool for filming in Lion King was actually being able to go into VR and see the entire environment and look around and see. And right now I just sort of feel very restricted. So I'm just saying that in advance, and, you know,
yes, no worries.
Just sort of play around and come some interesting shots.
I do have the VR thing to send you. But just, yeah, we have about 10 minutes. I'll start doing an establishing shot out here, maybe with a dolly. We just have a few virtual rigs that we can move around. I guess I'll try and approach this with some.
Yeah, you know, it might be nice to just go back pretty far and then just start pushing in as the thing starts to take off, and sort of try to meet it as it goes up in the air and then tilt up, because it looks really cool when you're below it and tilting it up. Maybe you need to go a little bit higher to get over, because there's structure there.
Yeah.
But I like being able to see that guy in the lights of the car. So I think you need to go to the right a little bit more. So you're looking over the shoulder of the car. Yeah, there you go. Keep going,
right?
keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Yeah, now sort of back up on this line, you know, and then
a little higher, right?
Yeah, and just
How's
go
that?
above that even higher so you can see the whole car.
How's that?
Yeah, a little more. Okay, now come on back. Go straight back now.
Great.
Yeah, and then just sort of try, I mean, this is just sort of a crazy idea, but just try dialing in towards that as the car starts to take off. So you get the whole understanding of this guy approaching. Again, it's like, I don't know the story. So I'm assuming this guy is threatening.
That's right.
The guy in the left is threatening, and they need to take off before he gets to them, or else he's going to kill them or something. And
that's right.
Let's just invent our own story here.
Yeah. Do you like the lens?
Yeah, it feels pretty good. Why don't you 40 wider and see what that looks like?
Wider is about there, 32.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, see, now pan to the left a little bit, so you see that. Yeah,
that's see that billboard.
Yeah, that's cool. See this.
All right, so we'll start here. Sound good?
Tilt up a little bit higher. You know.
How's that?
You know, tilt up.
No, tilt up.
Oh, tilt up. Sorry.
Tilt the camera.
Oh yeah.
That's the other thing is, we're used to terminology in live action filmmaking that doesn't, because we would always do that. We would always run into that problem where you'd say tilt up and then the camera would rise.
I just misheard you. Sorry.
No, that's a cleanup. So, it's getting the terminology, there together to understand it. But this looks pretty cool. And then if you push in as the guy's approaching.
All right, I'm gonna roll in. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna shoot a little more than we need to, and then we'll trim it afterwards.
And then tilt up with the car as it goes up.
Okay, let's do that again. So I'm gonna go back to our bookmark.
But see, here's, it perfectly demonstrates what we were able to do, when we were filming, that we were able to, actually, live action try something. And if it didn't work, you'd move the camera or.
There we go.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, we'd improve on it, but.
I'll just rewind, and then do you want to do shot from inside?
Yeah, I mean, another thing you could do is it's while you're doing that is that as you push in, you sort of are dropping down, so it makes the rise up of the car a little more dramatic than.
Yeah, crane down as you're pushing in.
So quick, what you can do.
Let's do it.
Great.
Yeah, after you go over the pile in the foreground, just start.
Yeah.
Down. Okay,
Yeah,
and start craning down.
Like that.
Yeah, we'll get a better dolly grip next time.
Yeah. That's why you have multiple people. You want to do a shot for me? Is it like do a camera car shot?
Oh, that's awesome.
Habib?
Sorry?
You want to do like a camera car shot from behind? If you have control of this, what I normally do is I back, is I offset the parent of the car for the camera. And parent yourself to that, make it advance by a second, like push the sequence or the parent to the right.
Yeah, we can do that.
Like 24 frames. So basically, the thing takes off first, and then you take off second. And,
yeah. So I'm gonna. I have a little piece that I can follow here. I'll just bring it back here. Bring it back.
The idea is that you're now out of sync with it.
Yeah, yeah. So what we'll do is, let me see. I can turn it off.
I'd be like in this one. I'd be on the deck. I'd be on the ground. I think.
Yeah.
As if you're another car.
As if you're a car right behind it.
Yeah.
Rob. Yeah, that's cool. So imagine you're a car at the same level as that car.
Right.
And it's attached to it.
Yeah. I'll just what I did, I just created a plate that follows the spinner, and then let's see. So I'm anchored to that.
Yeah, that's great. Now pan left a little bit, and move the camera to the left so you can see that guy a little bit better.
Like this.
So, yeah, there you go.
Okay, so yeah, I'm following with a lag. So
yeah, I think you need more of a lag. I think you're too on it. So I'd go at least a second, maybe 2 seconds then, if that's.
Okay, sounds good.
It's like there's a big marshmallow between the following car and the car that's taking off.
Yes, yeah. So here, let's see how this feels.
I'd be lower too. I'd still be on the deck.
Yeah, I agree.
And then we're following. Is that a good lag?
Yeah, and then you pan and tilt with it. You go up with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
That's cool. That's a great
So
idea.
I'm going to start lower at the beginning. We're going to have a little overlap action. How about this height? Is that good?
Something like that. I know you go a little more camera left so you can see that guy. Dolly left.
No, dolly left.
Dolly left.
Dolly left. Yeah, so you see that. You could clearly see that guy.
Yeah, a little bit more left. It'll work out.
How's this?
There you go. Good.
That's good.
Okay.
That's cool.
So we're going to bookmark this so we can come back and do another take, and then I'm going to rolling, and then I'll follow the spinner in frame, correct, when it's going?
Correct, yeah.
Here it goes, and we're going to lift with it. And we're following. There we go. And I'm going to cut. Should we do an interior shot?
Yeah, sure.
Let me rewind time here and go inside.
Well, you
We
know,
can
the
rewind
shot
to
that you
time,
showed,
just to let everybody know, we're going to go until 11 o'clock. So in case anybody has any
Oh, fantastic.
comments.
So I got a passenger here.
okay, I would, okay, what lens is this? Is still the 21? That's
21.
good.
Yeah.
I would push in closer to the windshield.
Okay,
When you pan around, yeah,
like this?
yeah, and then focus in the background.
Yep, focusing background.
Yeah, I still think you could be on the 21 though.
Yeah, the 21 is fine. I just meant when I said push in, I didn't mean the lens. I just meant the
Yeah.
They must should.
physical. There you go.
Is that a good distance?
Tilt
From
the camera up a little bit, so you see a little bit more above. Just yeah, there you go.
Like
Tilt
this?
down a bit. Yeah, there you go. That's good. You know,
Awesome.
and then, you know, do what you were saying, like Denny, you know, in that shot you showed where it was a point of view and then he panned around and looked down.
That's right.
This is the same kind of thing, but it might be as we take off and, you know, these images that are in front of us go off to the right, you use that movement to pan to the right to see the girl on the side, you know, and then
Yes.
then go back and look forward again, and maybe then look down as you get really high up, look down through those windows low on the left side, you know.
Okay,
So
great.
pan right, then you come back across and look down. Might be really cool.
Let's try it.
And looking through that little portal, you'd tilt down and see that guy. I would probably repeat the action of him walking, so it looks like you have more animation than you really do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it might be good to sort of let that guy be your, you know, at least the beginning of your interest in the shot.
Yes.
You know?
And then I'll pan to the passenger and then follow.
Now, if I were actually doing this, I would probably move the car to the left a little bit.
Yes.
You know, because right now he's kind of neither here nor there in that background.
I can move him. It's pretty easy to move
let's
him.
move him to the camera right a little bit.
So let's move him here. How's this?
I can't tell till you show me. Yeah, that's better. Okay, good. So
All right.
let's go. But you can, I mean, you know, for anybody watching this, you can see how quickly you can make these changes and come up with.
So I'm going to bookmark this and then do a take. See what you
Okay,
guys think.
sounds good.
So I'm going to let him approach. Then we start taking off.
And then start panning around.
Looking to the
Go
side.
a little bit faster, and look down first, and then look up at the girl. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, okay, yeah.
As you pan around, it's as if you're looking to see what you see from up here, and then you look up and see the girl.
Right.
And then as we fly, let's pan. You know, we'll pan to the left. You know, and then pan all the way down to the left and look down through that window on the left. So let's try that.
All right, and I'm going to play the role of the first AD to say that we have time for one more shot before lunch.
Okay, and then I do want to quickly do a quick edit, so I'll need 30 seconds for that. I'll do one more take. An interesting side note is that I actually puppeteered her head and her eyes using the phone last night. So you can just use your you know, basic devices. There we go. We caught him on the bottom to be able to record what you want.
That's great. Now pan around where she's pan around to the front, pan around to the front. Okay, and then look down to the left in the bottom of the window.
Yeah, like the Denny shot. Yeah.
There we go. Awesome.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
so
that's
let's quickly
cool.
do a rough edit.
Obviously, you can improve on that, but you know, it's pretty good. I didn't like the performance of the threatening guy, though.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna do. Oh, this one we didn't actually like that one, so I'm gonna go to the next one. We did 3 takes, right? I think.
Yeah, the last one was.
Yeah, just use the last ones of each one.
Yeah, I'll go to the last one. So I'm rating these as we go.
I mean, the problem is that you kind of want to be on the inside for some of this too, you know. So
yeah.
Again,
So
you know, it's having all this material that then gets edited together. That looks.
Then you might do an over on him, like with him as he's walking up, threatening to the car as well. You know. See, I know that there was a question that we normally have, which is we always edit as we shoot. You know, because you start to put the sequence together and get a feel for what it really wants to be like. I know there's a question about having an editor on the set, which is desirable.
Yeah, I
This one
think
we
that's
didn't
a
like the
really
first one.
wonderful. That's a really wonderful thing to have the. I mean, you could just. This could just be the shot if that guy was a little more threatening, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is really good to think in terms of editing and how you would do it. I mean, it's good to have all these shots, but you also feel, you know, you're giving up certain great shots because, you know, you've got to edit a story together. And right now we don't really have a story. We just have a bunch of shots and, you know, but it still tells you, you know, what the process is and what, you know, what you can learn from it.
Well, yeah, and it also tells you too if you don't have enough. Like right now, the guy stopped walking, so
Yeah.
So that forces you to cut out of the shot before you would want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if the guy pulled out a gun or did something interesting that made you realize there's some drama here instead of just some guy walking towards a car.
And you might want to say, you know, I would even say that I might have him walk to the driver's side as if he's going to do something, because walking to the middle of the car doesn't necessarily threaten that much, but walking to try to do something would.
But still, you can get an idea of, I mean, I find it really energizing to watch this and realize what you can do with it. And if you had, you know, real characters playing out a real story with real drama, then it would be really exciting to be filming this way, you know.
And what Caleb and I would do on Lion King is, even though it was pre-animated, we would adjust all the timings to make a shot better. You know, advance it, retard it, you know, all those sorts of things to actually re-perform or re-give it a different kind of meaning or setup than just living with what was done. Because as you go to do the shot, you would tell the actor, oh, you need to take 5 more steps in. Try, you know, why don't you try a little to the camera left and go to the front door, maybe come in at an angle, you know, and you try and go, okay, that didn't work. Let me try something else. As opposed to live with what you have, you keep on working it until you find something you like.
So I got the soundtrack here on my phone just to get the feel. It always feels good that way. Too much overlapping action there.
So yeah, it's a dream sequence now. So, yeah. but you know, like for instance, in terms of the operating, like this last shot, where you pan to her, and she's looking at you, and then she turns away, and then you hold on her too long. You know, I'm just saying, like, you know, if you were redoing it, you go like, okay, when she turns away, immediately go to her point of view now. You know what I'm saying? In other words, pan to the left as soon as she turns away from you. And then I'm just saying, like, if you redo the shot, like what you would probably do.
Like now. Let's try it.
Like,
so I should pan,
okay, well, go ahead. Okay.
I'll pan off of her sooner, right?
Yeah, as soon as she turns away, pan off of her.
And then, okay, and then back over to her. Okay, as soon as she looks away, you pan left. Okay, now pan left. There, see her point of view, and then down to the left again and see what you're seeing there. Yeah, that's the idea. I mean,
got it.
Assuming that fits with the story that we
There we go. Now we can swap that shot.
Made up story, yeah.
Yeah.
So no, I just did a
it's so much fun. It's really
and this would be example, Habib, that even though you used your phone, get another phone and do her live.
Yes.
You could talk during the shot, and because you might come up with other ideas. That's part of the magic of it is coming up with not pre-planned ideas, but things that come out of the moment.
Yes.
See, exactly. By the way, you can start with this shot, then cut to the wide shot as he's coming in. You could actually overlap the action there. You know what I'm saying? Just from an editing point of view, the point of view of the guy walking towards you is the first shot. Then you cut back wide to see him, you know, walking towards them, and it starts to take off. I mean, just, you know, I'm just sort of riffing on this whole idea.
All right, guys, I have to call a wrap on this.
No,
Thank
nice.
you so much, guys.
We're not even done yet.
I think for
That was
for
a lot
every
of fun.
people on here, I think we have to wrap this up. There are a few questions that have come up in the process that I would love to bring up. Something that we haven't really touched on too much is about what is the future of green screen? You know, with virtual set production, you know, can somebody talk to that a little bit? Like, are there's a question about panels are easily damaged. Is rotoscoping the main way we extract subjects if we need to get behind a virtual set comp, for instance?
If we never have green screen again, I'd be happy.
Unfortunately, it probably will never go away, although the video wall will replace like 50% of it. I mean, right off the bat. I think when you get into the one malady with the video wall is that you can't focus on the wall just yet. Maybe in the future you can. So if you need something that's tack sharp on the background, you probably have to switch your video wall Mandalorian screen to green or blue or some mattable item so that you could actually have a wide shot that's all in focus. But other than that, it will replace all of the shots that you do inside of a car, all the poor man's process or rich man's process, and now be incredibly rich man's process with the video wall. That'll replace it because it's always going to be a tick out of focus out of there anyway. So
you couldn't make a Marvel movie with the scale of effects they do on an LED stage. I mean, that's, yeah, I think that you want to have 10,000 marauding troops running across the stage and running right over the camera. It's not going to happen on an LED volume. So,
and you still have
about
LED volume. You're going to sandwich somebody. You're going to put a foreground piece from another piece of Unreal or Unity in the foreground of that, so they'll be as if they're totally integrated into the scene and rack focus from one object to the other. So it's a pretty useful tool that goes back into directing and cinematography live, because you now will make a comment like what Caleb just was doing on this one, you know, about change this, change that, let's move this over here, and you can do it as opposed to this pre-planned, storyboarded out visual effects sequence. It becomes live shooting again. It just with it in a different way, you know, in a different, more production value way, I think.
Yeah, and where are we on the kind of the AR like foreground comp? You know, is that something, Miles, do you have an opinion on that?
That's here. I mean, it depends on if you want to use it as much, if you have finished material, but certainly for any kind of pre-planning or planning as you're shooting that you're going to make it better later, you would have, it's basically simulcam, and you would have a foreground and a background and basically prep your shot. If it's pixel ready, you could shoot it in camera. If not, then you will comp it later.
Right.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of that of course, in broadcast as well, where you're seeing exactly that happening in real time, where you have foreground, background. And, you know, I think the interesting thing that someone touched on this is trying to pull a Matt. You know, you really have to decide. You have to decide what you're going to shoot, because otherwise you're going into the world of roto. But I think, you know, at some point, I anticipate we're going to crack that nut and be able to really understand where things are in the foreground so that you can have occlusion.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to get cut off from our Zoom chat shortly, but like, do you guys have any virtual production projects on right now? Like just a short round of like, yes, no, maybe, can't talk about it.
I finished one.
There are a ton of them out there right now. I can say that confidently. Yeah. And the other thing I want to point out is how exciting it is to see someone like Caleb talk about animation, which something that has traditionally been animation. And so that's another thing that I'm seeing a lot. I'm actually seeing DPs actually really engaged on what would have traditionally been something that is animation, actually lighting. And that's just so exciting. Now I'm seeing that quite a bit as well. It's exciting to see so many people involved in so many formats as well, bringing their best to each and every one.
Yeah, and Sam, like, what are you seeing on the VFX side? Like other departments that are adopting more real-time workflows than others?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think just like the guys touched on with the LED wall stuff that's been going on, we are seeing, even outside of game engines, we're seeing deep learning. And I have to bring it back to lighting and rendering. We're seeing a lot of deep learning solutions to speed up the rendering process. We're seeing technology now where we can tap into cloud rendering to actually get real-time feedback, which then allows, art directors, cinematographers, and production designers to now be in the production of the lighting process, which would alternatively be further down the line and then showing our working dailies.
Right. And kind of like a blue sky question, like a no limits question, like where are we going to be in 5 years? Like, are we going to have AI driven crew? I mean, Habib, you did an admirable job, but, will there be an AI that's trained on how Caleb likes to shoot things? And when he says, crab left, tilt up, like they know exactly what he's talking about at the pace at which he wants, like what, anybody can take this question, like what is the blue sky, no limits kind of view in 5 years? Where are we going to be?
Something I want to show really quick, it will embarrass myself because it's me in a mocap suit, but this is significant to me because I needed to motion capture something while the character needed to interact with things that were happening in the scene, in the virtual scene. So there's these containers and they fall and they start coming at the character and he's being shot at. And I had to basically motion capture both characters. And the best way I thought is to be in VR while I'm mocapping myself. So that's me in the lower right hand, wearing an accent suit in VR while these containers are getting tossed around and I'm dodging them. I'm dodging bullets, I'm firing at the other character. And then I went and mocapped the other character reacting to this character. But there was no other way I could see that my hands could line up with the dials and everything correctly. So I think, as much as it looks silly, it's pretty powerful you need to see the virtual space you're in, when you're capturing. And I think that and LED screens are like gonna be massive.
To answer your AI question, although you can do that, I think that what we were sort of establishing is that there is an art form to being a grip or a camera assistant or an operator that it's a feeling. It's hard to teach a feeling with artificial intelligence. You could get somebody to, move left, move right, do all that stuff. But when you actually go to work the shot, sometimes there's nothing better than another person who's an artist lending how they feel about something. It gets infused into the shots. Like, artificial intelligence acting is like, well, they're not really totally reacting emotionally to what they just heard the other actors say. So I think while you can do that, and some people will do that, I think that we will never really quite replace the human touch.
I agree with Rob about that. And I also agree with him about, acting as well, because if you just take an average person, just get some PA and put them in a suit and say, okay, you're going to react to this, I guarantee you it will not feel as real as a real actor doing it, who is knows what they're doing. I mean, that's why stars and great actors get paid tons of money, because they can do stuff that everybody looks at and says, oh, I could do that. Well, guess what? You can't do that. There's something about a great actor that would translate even in a mocap suit or whatever it happens to be, and those are all important elements that, the assistant following, with the same, feeling for the shot and the dolly grip, there's certain things that are, that have been inbred in the process of making movies for a reason. And, listen, there are animators who do wonderful things. I mean, I always love sort of the Wallace and Gromit, movies, because they're really funny and the characters really are good actors and everything. But, there's a certain magic to that a real actor brings to something in live action that's essential and really important.
The one thing that AI lacks is a point of view. AI at this point, there's no personality behind that decision. And the AI tests I've seen, when you propose something to some AI algorithm and it responds, and then you come back and you do the same proposal again, it'll respond entirely differently because it has no reference to what it thought might be the right thing before. So AI has a way to go before it can replace us. And, you know, puppeteers for years have this rule that the farther you are from the puppet that you're puppeting, the worse the puppeting is. And so the more removed we are from that direct interaction, the more difficult it becomes to get what you really intend.
All right, well, thank you so much. Oh, Rob, did you want to say one last thing?
Yeah, the one thing I would say that, you know, because everybody always asks about the future, and I think the future really is more of a soft science than a hard science. The future is taking these tools that were just described and how Habib was working with that, and a young person will be practicing and playing and learning, and they'll learn at a furious rate, like talking about artificial intelligence. They'll just keep on learning, and by the time they emerge in the marketplace, they're Mozart already. So the future of filmmaking is going to be better and better quality films because people have much more experience than when I grew up in the business, because it took me so long to actually get enough experience to make a difference and make my work better. But they could do it in grammar school and high school, and by the time they emerge on the market, they could have 15 years experience on me or people like me and just make a better movie. Make their first movie will be great. You know, so I think that's where the future lies, is
Right.
democratizing these tools. So,
and I agree totally. I mean, you know, all technology needs to be grabbed and in the hands of you know, brilliant young people who are, you know, who are going to be familiar with it really, you know, as an integral part of their lives, and they're going to do great work. I mean, I'm excited about what can be done in the future, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the work that Miles and Habib and Sam are doing and developing these tools and making all this stuff available, it's, you know, you no longer need to be a computer scientist to actually create some really beautiful work. You asked about a current project. We have a student finishing up a project in about 2 weeks. It's entirely motion captured. It's all in Unreal. It's a period film set in India in the late 1700s, when the British were on the rampage in India. And it's got tons of issues because, again, it's a student project and there's only so much you can get done. But it is an amazing attempt, and there are places in the film that are absolutely beautiful. It'll be done in about 2 weeks. Then I don't know what happens.
All right, well, thank you guys all. I'm just being mindful of the time. And, you know, it's been awesome. And I think that we could all probably spend 4 hours talking to you and getting the perfect sequence with Habib at the helm.
Let's do it.
We'll take it offline though, but you report back with that perfect sequence. Anyway, but thank you guys so much. That was so wonderful to hear, to get your points of view on virtual production and to tap into the experience that you bring to the table, because I think that is where the magic happens. Yeah, it's like it's the innate talent that is already there, and then now we have even more tools at our disposal to use to make the wonderful films that we want to make. Naomi, did you want to wrap up as well?
Yes. So I also want to echo Boo's comments and say that on behalf of the VES and all of our partners who were integral in putting together today's session, we want to give an enormous thank you to all of you, to all of our panelists, and to all of our participants who joined us today for this exclusive and absolutely riveting conversation on the intersection between camera, VFX, and lighting for virtual production, brought to you by Netflix, which really was an amazing masterclass that yes, none of us wanted to bring to an end. As we mentioned, the session was taped. The replay will be available soon on the VES website and the social media channels that you see on the screen. Please keep visiting those sites to sign up for our next webcast. We do have a great one coming up after Thanksgiving on December 2nd, VFX in 2021, with panelists from Framestore, Weta Digital, Foundry, and Praymaker. And then lastly, we are really committed to providing valuable educational content. So if you enjoyed today's webcast as part of our virtual production series, please take the survey to help us better understand what aspects of virtual production would be most valuable to you for us to cover in our future programming. This link is being sent to everyone who registered to join us on Zoom. It was posted in the Zoom chat and also in the Facebook comments. So your input will be really helpful as we move forward. And with that, we will say thank you again. And that's a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. Take good care, everyone.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.